How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm an avid herpetologist, and it is that time again. We are once again in the midst of a new release for the Digimon TCG. This Friday, we're going to be looking at the official release for version 2.0, which is basically a weird set amalgamation of BT18, as well as half the cards from BT19. Now, I've been having a lot of fun with Dragon Links the last couple of weeks, but I've already gotten quite a few requests for my personal look at what Machinedramon is going to be doing in this new format. Now, this is going to be a format we're seeing a lot of new cards introduced that are able to support our favorite Metal Boy Machinedramon, and I might be flying a little too close to the sun with what I'm bringing you guys today. So we are still on purple base, and yes, we will be playing, of course, the new Collision package, but I've got an interesting tech card in my list today that I don't know if I'm the first person to do this or not. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there who's tried it, but I've been having some success with it. So I want to show you guys this new card that I'm going to be trying out in Machinedramon that will hopefully elevate it to the next level. We'll talk quite a bit about that. Since obviously we have done plenty of Machinedramon deck lists, I'm trying to get these down to a little bit more of a watchable rate. So we'll be cutting down the explanations for a lot of the cards that we talked about 100 times already, and we'll just be focusing on a lot of the new additions and how I feel like Machinedramon should be stacking up in this new format. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the deck list. Hang on just a second, guys, before we get into it. If you are interested in picking up any of the cards that you're going to see featured in today's video, you can now do so using my TCG Player affiliate link, which can be found in the description of all of my videos moving forward. By following the link in the description below, you'll be redirected to the TCG Player website, where you are free to purchase all of the cards that you were going to buy anyway, with no additional charge to you. But just by following my link, they'll know that I redirected a little bit of traffic to their website, which means I'll be making a commission off of every card that you buy. If you're looking for a way to financially support the channel, again, without spending any additional money, just remember to follow my TCG Player affiliate link in the description below, buy the cards you were going to buy anyways, and you'll be helping support me while getting to continue enjoying the hobbies that we all share together. Thank you all so much for your support, and with all that out of the way, let's get into the video. Alright, and here we are back again for another Machinedramon deck profile. Right off the bat, I just want to call quick notice to these beautiful sleeves that I finally decided to pick up. I've been putting these sleeves off for a while just because I'm not a big fan of oversleeves, or at least I wasn't before. But I finally decided, you know what, this is like the last little piece of Machinedramon merch that I've been missing for this deck, and these sleeves are absolutely stunning. Finally bit the bullet, tried oversleeves for the first time, and they're not so bad. Definitely recommend giving them a try, but yeah, since this sleeve quality on its own is not the greatest, been putting them off, but I finally have them, and I couldn't be happier. I absolutely love this sleeve design, but anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it. Starting, of course, with the eggs, not really a whole lot has changed. We are still, of course, playing our 4 copies of Demimeramon and our single copy of BT3 Demimeramon. These are going to be, of course, the eggs that allow our rookies to be fully disposable, throw them into security, and get lots of draws. Now, we've also got a new way to trigger this ourselves without having to throw them into security if we want, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, but obviously, these are pretty self-explanatory. We're still waiting on black to get a relatable egg if we want to be really, committing to black base, though I do think black base will be coming back once we finally get access to Cyberdramon Ace, but, we'll cover that when we get to it. Go ahead and talk about our rookies. We are, of course, still playing 3 copies of Ukkomon. Ukkomon's going to be our great dig tool that's going to help us with early consistency, finding the pieces we need, whether that's going to be Machinedramon, whether that's going to be Cyborgs. Ukkomon is obviously a fantastic card. We are going to be still playing our copies of Tapirmon. Now, I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure if I was playing Tapirmon on my last list or not. Tapirmon was basically the replacement for Promo Ukkomon. I'm actually not playing any copies of the Promo Ukkomon now. I've replaced the slot that Ukkomon previously occupied with a new rookie that we'll be talking about in just a second. But Tapirmon has been my secondary rookie of choice. It is a purple body that has an on-deletion to draw a card. Tapirmon is a really nice substitute that, again, just kind of lets us draw a little bit deeper. If we throw a Tapirmon into security with BT14 Demimeramon, we'll get to draw a card, discard a card, and then draw 2 more, so we'll get to dig 3 cards deep on that 1 card's destruction. So, definitely nice to have, but the other rookie that I'm playing is a brand new addition to my Machinedramon lists. I'm actually playing a full 4 copies of Syakomon from EX5. So this Syakomon has an on-play. For each of your opponent's Digimon, draw a card, and then you can trash a card in your hand. It also has an inheritable, which oddly is sort of relevant on all turns. At any time an effect plays an opposing Digimon, gain a memory. This is just relevant because obviously we are going to be playing copies of Promo Raremon, so we can actually Digivolve on top of our Syakus. But this is basically going to be replacing Hagurumon in our list. Now, bear with me for a minute, because we're talking about exactly why we're doing this change, because it is a change that we've made for a purpose, but there is definitely a lower floor than Haguru in the sense that if our opponent has nothing in play, we're going to be drawing nothing, but we would still have to discard a card if we play this from our hand. But obviously, also, the ceiling is going to be significantly higher. There are quite a few decks that are going to be committing several bodies to the board in the format. We now have the brand new Lord Nightmon deck that's going to be everywhere, that tends to spam a lot of bodies. We have decks like Shoto Mother Control. There's just a couple of other ones. Obviously, there's going to be the big ones that are going to have multiple bodies to deal with. Certain hybrid lists may also potentially play out a bunch of small bodies like Ukkos and Floodgates. Maybe a little bit less frequently, but Syakomon is going to be a nice inclusion. It is another dig tool that's going to be drawing us cards and letting us trash cards from our hand. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about why we included Sayako over Haguru in a moment. We are going to be playing 3 copies of Promo Raremon, as mentioned. This is, again, a really nice dig tool, being able to discard any card we want from our hand in order to draw 2. One thing that I will talk about with Raremon real quick, something that I've kind of been having to learn for myself, is how it works in terms of card economy. So what I mean by that is we do not always have to be playing Raremon directly from our hand to the field. I found myself wanting to Digivolve into Raremon more often than I had previously thought. What I mean by talking about card economy is Digivolving Raremon onto Tapirmon, which may not seem super intuitive because we're losing the on deletion. But you have to remember that when we Digivolve Raremon onto Tapirmon, we're drawing a card for the Digivolution anyway. So basically, if we have the Tapirmon and we are okay doing that Digivolution, especially out of the raising area, we're going to be drawing the card that we would have gotten from the on deletion, and we'll still be able to use the on play when Digivolving without losing any card economy, and for a memory cheaper, since we'll be able to Digivolve for 3 as opposed to 4. That is just an interaction that I've found myself doing more often than not if I'm trying to be super memory efficient with my turn, especially when these bodies are meant to be disposable anyway. But with these out of the way, the reason that we are running our lot here, my super spicy secret tech for you guys today is 3 copies of BT19 Kimeramon. Now we're going to have to talk quite a bit about this guy because there is a lot to unpack here. Kimeramon is 8 to play, 8000 DP, and 4 to Digivolve. On play or when Digivolving, by deleting one of your Digimon, delete one of your opponent's level 3, level 4, and level 5 Digimon. On deletion, by deleting one of your other level 4 or lower purple or red Digimon, you may play a Machinedramon from your trash without paying the cost. Now it also has a security +1 inheritable, not super important for our purposes here, but technically speaking, we can actually build up into this off of our purple base, so, keep that in mind just in case it does come up. So, alright, this Kimeramon is basically the reason that I have opted for the base that I have here. This Kimeramon has a really, really strong interaction with our EX1 Machinedramon, who is of course still the centerpiece of our deck. So let's talk a little bit about the process of how this card is going to work. To kick things off, let's talk about this card's ceiling. So let's say that we have a perfect setup. Let's say that we have a Demimeramon egg and a Tapirmon in our raising area, and the turn passes to us, right? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go ahead and push our Tapirmon forward, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter where our memory is at, because since Kimeramon costs 8, obviously, we're going to be able to use this effect regardless of what happens. Now, it is worth mentioning that in order to kick this combo off to its fullest potential, we need there to be a Kimeramon already in our trash. The good news is, Syakomon can get that Machinedramon there instantly if we need to. So as long as we have a memory setter in play, or at least are able to get to 3 memory, even on an empty board with nothing in raising, we can always, of course, play our Syakomon, draw some cards hopefully, discard the Machinedramon that we want to use as our target, and then we're able to, of course, go right into Kimeramon. Obviously, there are plenty of other ways that we could get that Machinedramon into the trash. We, of course, still have our copies of Attack of the Heavy Removal Digimon. We can always pitch Machinedramon as cost for that, as long as we have a Tamer in play, before we go into our Kimeramon. That way our Machinedramon has Blitz as soon as it comes out, and we can get the card in trash as soon as we need it there. With that being said, okay, so let's continue with the interaction here. So we've got our purple body in play, we play our Kimeramon. Kimeramon's effect is going to almost always delete itself. So we're popping our Kimeramon, and now we get to pop one of our opponent's 3, 4, and level 5 bodies. I've actually cut a few of my removal level 5 inherits just because we can control the board so well with this card. Whether our opponent is playing around it or not, more than likely they are going to have at least one target, so for all intents and purposes, consider this a kind of cross between a removal spell and potentially a board wipe depending on what situation our opponent has granted us. So like it's coming down and could potentially kill up to 3 bodies, more than likely will at least kill 1, but even if they don't have anything to kill, we still get to use the rest of the effect. So we've played this for 8. On deletion, we're going to kill our purple body, whether that's Tapir, Sayako, or Raremon, and from that point, we are going to immediately play out our Machinedramon. Now, if that Machinedramon was already in trash and we don't need to worry about discarding it, before our Machinedramon on play activates, we also have the benefit of activating any on deletions that were potentially needing to be used. So let's say that we did have, a Tapirmon with an egg that we popped with our Kimeramon. After Machinedramon has been played out, we can use the Tapir on deletion to draw 1, Demimera, discard, draw another 2. Now we can use our Machinedramon to not only tuck things that we would have just discarded, but also things that we potentially just drew. So we're actually digging a little bit deeper right as we're playing the Machinedramon, which, since we technically played for only 8 memory, is now going to be gaining us 5 memory back, meaning this entire interaction, assuming we already had the body in play, only costed us 3 memory. Super, super memory efficient. This is currently the cheapest way to get a Machinedramon into play, as far as I can think of at least. Supreme Connection can obviously play it for a net of 4, being able to play it for 3 cheaper off of a net 7. But Kimeramon takes that one step further and lets us get it out for a total of 3 memory, and is of course able to do this with no real setup beforehand, as long as we have a Machinedramon in trash. Even if we are at 0, we'll gain our 5 memory back. If they have a setter, wouldn't matter anyways. So Kimeramon is a super efficient and really, really clutch card that I think is actually going to be really impactful in the meta. Like I mentioned, there are quite a few decks in the meta that are looking to spam a lot of bodies into play, which is beneficial not only for our Syakomon, but we can immediately punish all of those bodies by dropping a Chimera, wiping a bunch off the board, and potentially still getting to Blitz thanks to our Machinedramon. So Kimeramon is going to be the big build around for my particular list. I am playing a total of 3 copies, and since it can only pop a level 4 or lower, purple or red, that's why I'm going to be playing these. So in total, we have 10 different Digimon that our Kimeramon will be able to destroy. And like I said, as long as we have a memory setter in play, we can play either of these from our hand on an empty board and still be able to drop Chimera. If we have a memory setter plus an Analogman, now Raremon qualifies as well. We can always just drop that for 4, hopefully without pass and return. Play Kimeramon, wipe the Raremon, and just kind of go from there. I've been trying some games out with this current ratio, and it's gone pretty well. In fact, I would even go so far as to say one of the things I would actually even recommend with this Kimeramon is remembering that, like I said, you can't view this as just like, you have to get full value out of it every time. Since it only costs you 8 memory, you can literally play this at, whatever memory you happen to be at, play Machinedramon out. As long as you have some cyborg showing, you're still going to get to tuck them and get memory, and you can do this as early as, turn 2. It's probably the fastest and easiest way to get our big body in play well before our opponent may be expecting it. So this card just lets you turbo your machines out super, super fast. I absolutely love this interaction. Highly recommend trying it out in your list if you haven't before. Alright, so now that we've talked about Chimera, the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest new addition to the deck, let's go ahead and talk about our level 5s. I am still playing 2 different sets of blocker. We have our MetalGreymon as well as our Megadramon. These are generic blocker sources just in case the Digivolve happens. We will not lose that blocker when our top card is no longer a level 6 machine. Similar story with our Andromon. Andromon is going to be my single reboot inheritable. Now, Reboot is, it is what it is. Like, it's still obviously a pretty solid ability, but it's not something I felt like I needed every single game. It's something that I'm okay tucking later or waiting, but I still have the extra blocker inherit just because obviously playing a Machinedramon from hand, if I don't have Blitz, I want to make sure that the Machinedramon can still interact with the opponent's board, assuming I don't have Analogman out yet. So 1 extra block felt more worthwhile than having that reboot, and obviously we're still going to be playing both just because that way we can at least get access to both at some point during the game. I'm now all down to only a single removal inherit, like I mentioned, because of Kimeramon. The fact that we are able to control the board so effectively, we're just going to be playing our single copy of MetalMamemon, which in my opinion is probably the best of the removal options available. I have actually cut BT9 Megadramon. It is no longer in the list. Sure, the card is obviously still able to pop things like, for instance, Shoto, which is obviously, still a good effect, but we have a bunch of new DP gain effects in this list. I really feel like the, Mother D Reaper Shoto interaction is just not that big of a problem for Machinedramon when you can easily be cresting, 16, 17, 18,000 DP pretty consistently. So yeah, I'm not going to be playing copies of Megadramon because I think Kimeramon controls the board just fine already, and we're still going to at least be playing 1 just so we can help pop some extra bodies when we need to, but Anyways, that's my reasoning for that. Let's get into DP boost. We, of course, still have our MetalGreymon. I am also playing, of course, our one each of our brand new cyborgs, Daipenmon and JetSilphymon. Now, what these cards do in play is not super duper relevant, but they bring an identical inheritable, which is all turns. This Digimon gets plus 2000 DP. This basically permanently replaces BT6, Megadramon, and Gigadramon, who are going to be one turn or the other. We finally have DP buffs that are usable on both turns, helping our Machinedramons and Chaosdramons get to even higher DP heights than they would have been able to prior. Both of these cards are excellent. Now, just because they do have the effects, we can go ahead and at least mention they each have one keyword that is somewhat relevant. In Daipen's case, it's going to be Iceclad, which does actually come up again in the Mother Shoto matchup. Hilariously, it can trade with a Mother D Reaper blocker, and JetSilphymon has Raid, which, you know, probably isn't going to come up super duper often. Very rarely, I feel like, are we going to be dropping these from our hand, but those abilities are on there, so just keep those in mind. Next up, we have 2 copies of Megadramon from BT15, having that nice D-Digivolve effect, with aces becoming even more prevalent than they have ever been, with new generic staples like Shadow-Seraphimon ace entering the format. I wanted to up this to 2. This card is not going to be at 2 for very long, because again, once we get Cyberdramon ace, no reason to be playing more than one copy of this at that point, because we'll have a second generic D-Digivolve inherit. We, of course, have our 2 copies of Gigadramon from EX7. This is how we are going to be getting Collision. Now, Gigadramon's on play is not super relevant in the sense that obviously we're not playing Three Musketeers, so like we don't really tuck anything that we're going to be finding, but on play or when digivolving, it does at least reveal your top 4 cards, and it basically just lets you put them back on the top or the bottom in whatever order you choose. So if there's a bunch of fluff you don't want on the top, you can always bottom deck it, or if there's cards that you need, you can position them where you need them to on the top of the deck. But obviously the big reason to be playing Gigadramon is the Collision inheritable. We are now forcing our opponent's bodies to block, so this card, at least in my list, is going to be replacing BT8 MetalGreymon. Now, there is an argument to be made for maybe cutting like one copy of BT15 Megadramon and having at least one copy of BT8 MetalGreymon, just so we can still interact with our opponent's board. But since I think a lot of decks are going to be looking to play around Gigadramon right now, because, you know, this is going to be... If you're on Machinedramon, they know you're going to be playing Collision. It's pretty much a given. There are going to be a lot of circumstances where they're probably going to try to keep their body suspended so you don't benefit from that redirection. So I feel like BT8, you know, it's nice in the situations where, you know, they don't give you the body, and maybe it's just that one additional card that'll let you interact with an opponent's body if you don't already have access to Collision. But playing off of Collision, I am still also playing a single copy of MetalGreymon from Starter Deck 1, actually. Now that we can force our opponent to block, this card actually makes Gigadramon strictly better than BT8 MetalGreymon in a lot of circumstances. This MetalGreymon's inherit makes it where anytime our Digimon is blocked, we gain 3 memory back, which basically means that if we're playing Machinedramon off of our Kimeramon, we have Blitzed, we have Collision and MetalGreymon in our sources, force them to block. That last 3 memory that we needed to spend on our Kimeramon has officially been gained back, meaning we have now played Kimeramon and brought out a 5-source Machinedramon for 0 memory. Completely free, which is bonkers. We've never been able to play a fully free Machinedramon before now. Here we are, guys. We have officially reached that point. We've got our Collision and our MetalGreymon. If we're playing it off of Kimeramon, we have played it for 3 memory, gained the 3 back, completely free Machinedramon. Absolutely freaking wild. So that is going to do it for this interaction. These cards are going to be pretty standard for Machinedramon moving forward. Definitely pick them up if you haven't already. Now we're going to be talking about the cards I know everyone is the most excited for, which is our Security Trash effects. We got 2 new ones, but I'm only actually playing 1 additional this format. We're still playing our MetalTyranno and our copy of Rapidmon, because these are the best generic cards that have that effect, that Security Trash effect, while still having relevant on-play effects. For the other one, I am choosing to personally play Vespamon, just because it's on play. It lets it pop a 2-cost or less Digimon unless you have face-up security cards, which obviously we're not going to. But the fact that it does have an ability to pop a body, even if it's not likely to ever come up, is still technically better than Cannonbeemon, who has completely identical stats, but the on-play will literally never come up. We will never have face-up security cards, meaning we cannot use it to de-digivolve our opponent's Digimon, so I'm going to be playing Vespamon just in case some mad lad out there is playing a 2-cost rookie. Congratulations, now we can pop it with Vespamon. It's not going to come up realistically, but you may as well play the one with some relevant text over the one that doesn't, right? But I'm going to be playing 3 different versions of that security trash effect, since beating over our opponent's bodies is obviously going to be the primary plan, but I don't want that to be our only game plan. So instead of a 4th version of that effect, instead of Cannon B, I am still playing a single copy of Megadramon. Megadramon, in my opinion, is still the best security +1 card that we can be running. Obviously, it still has that on play, which lets us pop 2 smaller bodies. It's just one more way that we can control our board, very similar to our Kimeramon. But just in case our opponent is not providing us bodies, if they're playing defensive and not letting us trash security through these effects, I don't want to be completely walled out, right? Like, I want to be able to still be aggressing the opponent's security and being able to put them on a faster timer. So Megadramon is in here basically just to make sure that even if we don't have a body to swing over and get those extra checks with our security trash effects, we still have the ability to at least be digging one security through faster and put our opponent at hopefully on like a 2-turn clock in that way, if not through this way. So that's the reason I'm still playing this. I'm only playing 3. I feel like 3 is plenty. You really don't need more than that. It's very much overkill. If you can get all 3 in a stack, fantastic. Probably won't happen super duper often, but at least with the extra one, you're more likely to see 2 more often, and trashing 2 security every time you delete something on either turn, very, very scary, and it's how Machinedramon is going to probably be playing moving forward. Speaking of Machinedramon, thanks to the pre-release event this last weekend, we now have a beautiful new artwork to look at for our boy EX1 Machinedramon. I honestly wasn't super high on this art when it first got spoiled. I thought it was like okay, but man, I gotta tell you, the foiling on this artwork is exquisite. This card is so cool looking. I absolutely love it. It has very quickly become my favorite artwork for Machinedramon. So very happy to have the new arts here. But you may have noticed that I did cut a copy of Machinedramon because obviously we don't have to just be playing him from our hand anymore. Playing him from our hand is still a very viable route to go, but thanks to our Kimeramons, we can now recycle them from trash, meaning we don't need a full 4 copies. We can play the copies from our hand, bring the rest back from trash after they've been interacted with. So that's going to be my reasoning there. So we are still playing, 3 copies, but we don't want to go any lower, but a full 4 did not feel necessary. I wanted that space for other cards, especially some digging cards. Speaking of which, Silver Moon, if you're watching this, I know you said to cut some of my cyborgs. I did cut one of them for an extra digging tool, but sorry buddy, I'm not going below 16. So we are playing a total of 16 of our level 5s, not counting Kimeramon. I'm not going below that. I'm sorry. I'm going to have a hard time doing that just because obviously we still want to have level 5s that we can see for our stacks super early, and we want level 5s that we can pitch to our Analogman consistently one turn over the other. So we've got 16. I'm probably not going lower than that, but we are going to be playing only 3 copies of Machinedramon. We're also still playing our 3 copies of Chaosdramon and 2 copies of Chaosdramon X-Antibody. These are obviously our follow-up plays. Chaosdramon X also with a beautiful new artwork. There is just so much new bling to be found in the Machinedramon decks these days. You gotta love it. This card just looks super, super cool. As someone who was never a big fan of the artwork for the original Chaosdramon X, I'm very happy that we have an artwork where you can actually see more of the Digimon itself. We've got our 4 copies mandatory of Analogman. We are also, of course, playing our 2 copies of Starter Deck Tai, once again for that additional draw power as well as DP gain. And since we now are playing Collision, it's more likely we are going to be able to force this card to trigger on our own turn, which means we can draw additional cards to hopefully make some new plays before we pass things back to our opponent. So 2 copies of Tai Kamiya will hopefully help us get over some of those difficult DP thresholds for decks like Magnamon X and Tapirmon, which are still going to be around in the format. And wrapping things up, our only option card, we are not playing Supreme Connection. We are playing a total of 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. I still feel like 3 is probably about right for this card. I have seen some lists playing 4, and if that's working well for you, I'm, more power to you. I have considered bumping this up to 4 now that we're playing the Chimera package because we're able to play level 6s more consistently between turns. But for now, I am still playing just the 3 copies. No copies of Supreme Connection in this list because I'm basically replacing Supreme Connection's job with our copies of Kimeramon. We already have a lot of digging tools that we can use to kind of get through our deck and find different pieces. And one of the big things with Supreme Connection that I've always been kind of iffy about in Purple Base, it's a setup card. And if we don't already have other setup cards like one of our Tamers or a Raremon in play, actually playing Supreme Connection from our hand is kind of awkward and difficult. Kimeramon, by contrast, is still playing our Machinedramon for that cheaper cost, but we don't have any specific color requirements for it. I mean, obviously, we do still need to see, like, a purple body that we can delete if we want to play Machinedramon, but this card feels like it needs a lot less very specific setup than Supreme Connection does. It does stink that we don't have that, you know, really nice security check potentially anymore, but I feel like we've got plenty of impactful security checks already, so I'm not too worried about that. But if you're wondering why I'm not playing Supreme Connection, that is the reason why. We're playing 4 copies of Sayako, we're playing 3 copies of Raremon, and the 3 copies of Chimera are going to basically be not only replacing Supreme Connection as far as playing Machinedramon for cheaper, it's also board removal, so it just kind of pulls double duty, and I think this card is much better roll compression than Supreme Connection is, strictly for purple base. If you're playing black base, obviously, you're probably still going to want to keep playing Supreme Connection. I certainly will be when I go back to black base, inevitably, but for the time being, purple base, Chimeramon, no Supreme Connection. That's about it. This is a pretty sweet list. I've been playing some practice games with it, and it feels really, really smooth. I feel like I've been able to get the Chimeramon combo off pretty consistently. Like I said, it's shockingly easy to get it off as early as turn 2, which is obviously really nice to see. Lots of new bling. This deck is beautiful to look at. I really like where Machinedramon is positioned in this new format. I'm probably going to be pinging back and forth between playing this and playing Dragon Links. I think Dragon Links is another really underestimated deck with a lot of competitive viability, a lot more than I even gave it credit for in my deck profile, and I'll probably be doing another Dragon Links profile at some point. So if you want to learn any more, you know, about the Dragon Links deck or how I play it, you know, stay tuned for that video. But for the time being, if you have any suggestions about Machinedramon or want to leave your own personal brews in the comments below, feel free to do that. Be sure, of course, to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next upload. With that, I have been an avid herpetologist. Thank you all for joining me for another deck profile. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.